Hi, guys. This is David, and it is an honor for me to be joined by SOA Chris. How you doing tonight, Chris?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Really excited to be talking with you today, and we're going to be talking about the problems in the competitive scene. But first, could you go over what your history in competitive Splatoon is?
Sure. So I'd say it was around early June of 2018 when I was looking into playing Splatoon competitively.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time, I had no idea of where to start. I was just your average casual. I was probably still S plus rank at that time. And I actually started on Instagram where I found my members of SOA. And I wasn't the leader at the time, but I'd say it was maybe a half a year later, leadership was handed over to me, and that's when I really took the initiative to start to find other ways to connect in the community. So I got a Twitter. I started signing us up for more tournaments, and that's when I found SAC, and I was fifth place overall in season 0 of SAC, and that's where I really got my start because after that season, I started working with SAC and TOing and commentating. And even though I'm no longer with SOA and I'm not on a team currently, I still do a lot of pickups and competitive stuff. And I'm just working hard to get to the top of the scene like everyone else.
Oh, right on. I actually didn't know Instagram had a Splatoon scene. I'm not on
That's
Instagram that
what a lot of
often.
people say.
So SAC was an important part of kind of getting you into the competitive scene.
hmm
Well, for sure. So what is it that you see as far as the problems that are happening with the competitive scene that's kind of slowing down, I guess, the progress as far as what it could become?
Well, I guess one of the first problems that comes to mind is having a set map list. It was one of those discussions that came up maybe a couple months ago, and it seems like we almost just dropped the thought of having a universal map list after all these videos and discussion of having one. It seems like we almost forgot about it, and I was thinking more and more about why it's important to have one, and then I thought, well, what is JP doing that's making them so much better than us? And but it's like it's just universally known that they are higher skill level than us. So I was thinking maybe it's the fact that they only play zones that they're so much better at teamwork than we are. Because think about it, if we're still playing on 100 plus map mode combos and scrims, like I guess you could say that it would help with your versatility and figuring out different ways to push up as a team or stay together as there's a bunch of different things to work on, but there's just too many different things to work on. And because Japan cut it down to something so simple, they find this, I guess, same way of doing something over and over again. And they're so used to playing zones that teamwork is just a natural thing. They have one objective to focus on, so they already know how to do that and they just know how to do it over and over again with each other. And that's why also you see a bunch of different weapons in their comps. And we're like, oh, what the heck is that? Why are they playing a custom range blaster on zones? It's because they already have this pattern of play that they're so used to that they have to try and experiment with different ways to try and beat each other. So that's why they're progressing so much faster than us, in my opinion.
So it's a matter of kind of focusing. They're going to be able to focus on some specific maps, and then they can really fine tune it down to strategies of sorts.
Right. And I think we have the tools to get there. Like, I think one of the greatest resources is Sendu.inc. He has this map planning part of the website where you can draw plans for your team. And I'd say that it'd be a great thing to use if we weren't constantly playing on 100 plus map mode combos. Nobody's going to draw out a plan for every single map and mode. And you'd probably have a bunch of different plans for just one.
Mm-hmm. I know Kbot was chiming in the chat saying that some of the larger tournaments have started kind of using map lists that are similar to each other. Uh, for example, like Ludi, the Crown, G7. There was also, I think, recently a poll where people were trying to, I believe it was like trying to decide what are the favorites. I know K-Bot's actually done some polling data as well to try and figure out, just what would be the favorite, or, well, I guess that's actually one of the problems, I think, with a standard map list is like who gets to decide that.
Sorry, what was that? I think the connection was acting up for a second.
Oh, I was like, as far as like some of the issues with deciding like what is a standard map and mode, like how do we get to decide it? Is it mostly TOs? Is it something like where they do a poll, kind of like KBot, where you're like basically vote? There's an issue with popularity. I don't know. I think FLC was kind of chiming in as well. Like, do we give? We try and like work on some sort of counterpick system as well, where players have some sort of agency to be able to decide what maps that they want to play like during these events.
Right. So I think a good way to start off with making a map list might be to go to some of the top players and survey them because they know things better than the mid to low level players. And the problem with making a map list based on what everyone's opinion is that you're going to get opinions that may not be the right ones. And that's no offense to the players who aren't as higher skill level as the top players, but it's just that they know why a map is good and what makes a map good because they've been playing on so many of them for so long that they understand what makes one good for competition. And I honestly myself don't know if I know what makes a map best for competition. So I would put my trust in their hands in deciding what's the best for improving as a team, what makes the most sense, what really tests your abilities as a team. So I think if we were to start somewhere, the surveys would be a good place to start again, but we should be going to them first and maybe try and pass it along the line to see if everyone's okay with it. But I think they're the most important resource in that case.
Mm. And then at that point, it'd ultimately be up to tournament organizers to kind of try and work together and kind of implement these in different ways in their tournaments.
Right.
Yeah, I've almost felt like there's kind of been a little bit of congealing in some ways. Like it seems like Mako Mart has really shown up as one that I see a ton. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I know you were involved in Squid Spawning Grounds. I was watching that the other night, and I seemed like I saw Mako a lot in that tournament.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty common.
I don't know if they have like a set map list there, but they actually get to counterpick, don't they?
Yeah. So for the first Swiss part of the tournament, we had a map list for people, and once they got into the top cut, we had set play happen, which was the first for a lot of them, and it was kind of confusing to them at first. But the counterpick system came in there, and the reason we kept it to the top cut was because we don't want these players who may be playing in a tournament for their first time ever, who are still amateurs of the game, to be counterpicking right from the get-go. Like, it's not something that you're automatically good with. You don't know what your weapons work on best, what your team plays on best, until you're at that little bit of a higher level of play. So we kept it to top cut. And there was a set map pool there that was made by our seeding committee, and we tried to make it maps that we do see in common map lists, like you're talking about with the Crown or Pay to Splat. Like, they have set map lists, but I still think it's important that we eventually set up a universal one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, universal, I guess, as far as it can be, with some I guess the sort of major orgs. Is SAC still kind of associated with EGTV? Or am I wrong? Right on that?
No, I'm not sure exactly when the breaking apart happened, but I don't think we use their Twitch channel to stream anymore for the finals. I'm not sure on that one 100%, but right now we just use our channel to stream.
All right, right on. Yeah, I mean that definitely, I think it definitely is something that would help a lot of, especially pardon, season zero. Okay, it would definitely help, especially a lot of newer players, if they could definitely focus on just a smaller, at least from the start, a smaller list of map they can really focus on, and especially if I guess it's too when you're trying to play weapons, it can be really hard. There's a lot of dedication to learning something new, and if you're playing maybe a certain weapon that like a brush that might be good, really good on some maps or modes, but maybe not great on another map, you can at least have some sort of idea of what you'll be other maps you'll be playing on, so you can kind of pick a secondary or a tertiary.
Mm-hmm.
All right, excellent. So, as beyond the set map list, what else do you think needs to be done as far as in order to progress the community?
I think this kind of goes hand in hand with having a set map list, but I realized a few times as I'm scrimming or competing that I don't really have a specific direction that I'm going in, and I think it's the thing that a lot of teams don't have, and I'm not honestly sure of that if every team does struggle with having a direction to go in, but I think coaches help a lot with that, but there's still no set path to getting better in my mind that I can at least think of or see. I feel like teams, what they do is they'll hop on, they'll play scrims for under 2 hours or so, and they'll communicate what their problems are, but I guess the thing I see a lot is that they're not focusing on their strengths or what they're doing good that they need to do more often. And I think in general, there's just this whole misconception of what we can do to get it better. I feel like there are probably a lot of teams out there who just play the game and don't necessarily know what to work on or how to improve on it.
No, yeah, definitely for sure. That's something I noticed when I started doing martial arts. Is the coaches themselves, they have a system in place, and you're kind of put into that system, and they might modify things here and there, but they actually have sort of a progress tree of that's how you improve in the game. So there really doesn't seem to be that sort of system. It's kind of like we're just making it up as we go. But
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that could be realistically implemented in a game that's kind of like maybe 3 years old? I think one of the things I've always worried is like you don't really have a whole lot of veterans in this community that don't play the game but are still around. It's almost like everyone that kind of grows out of Splatoon or moves on from Splatoon just goes to the next, like a Fortnite or a Valorant or something else. I mean, how would we attract, I guess, the coaches or like set up that kind of structure in place to where teams could kind of follow into those systems?
Right. So I think this kind of goes into something else that I actually wanted to discuss as well. Somebody mentioned it on the tweet that I originally wanted to start the conversation with. They said that it kind of goes hand in hand with the popularity of certain people in the community. And I'm not sure who's to blame on this, but I feel like there's a huge disconnection from the top players and the mid to low level players. And I see sometimes people trying to make that better with servers like +2 becoming a thing. I know that still seems like high level, but at the same time, it was still a way for people who weren't good enough to get into +1 to still get together and play the same way that +1 does and have some of them play together as well so they can get better. But still, I feel like there's this huge disconnection between the higher level of play and those lower levels of play. And in order to get to that higher level of playing popularity, you kind of just have to get lucky or have connections. I know people don't like hearing that a lot, and a lot of people disagree with it, but at the same time, unless you have the people in place to help you understand the game fully and understand how you can improve to get better, you're never really going to get better unless you figure it out yourself.
So it's kind of trying to find some sort of mentor to like help your team out, basically.
Right. I think having more high-level players coach mid to low-level players would create this system of improvement so that we could overall be more competitive with each other. Because there are a bunch of mid-level teams that do get better, but it takes a really long time because they have to figure it out. And in general, our scene would be a lot more closer in skill level, I'd say, if we did have people coaching more often from the top level of the scene. But it's just, I can understand why they may not want to reach out to those middle level players because they don't really know who's committed or who they should really reach out to, who's worth their time, or if they even have the time because they're dedicating so much time into their own gameplay. So it's kind of like something that I think we have to all come together to figure it out because it could go either way. It could be mid or low level players aren't reaching out to top players often enough and they are willing to offer their advice, or they aren't offering their advice. And I'm honestly not sure who the source of the problem is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like we need like some sort of mentorship program. Like you've almost seen it in some sort of like businesses where like not necessarily business, but like some groups and stuff where almost in order to really kind of advance your own career, you need to reach out and help other entrepreneurs, and that you just even being involved with that connection. Like even if it's plus one, this is just a weird idea, but if like in order to be in plus one, you had to kind of mentor either like a player or a coach, to stay in there or stay active, or even if it helped your voting itself, that would be that would be something that might be able to help. But obviously, it seems very hard to actually force other players to help other players.
Right.
Not to put it that way, because I mean, a lot of them, they have work and they have their own jobs, internships, college, and then of course on top of that, they need to be practicing at the very highest level to try and move beyond what they are now. Because I mean, there is definitely, despite a lot of players that have to learn on their own, there's a lot of younger players that are definitely gunning for even the highest level. And so if you stop for a few months or you slow down, they'll be right on your tail.
It's true.
So that is definitely a conundrum that needs to be solved. I mean, hopefully it's something that I would almost like to see, I would almost like to see high-level players kind of almost implement that as, kind of a way to improve their scene. But at the same time, what is the benefit for them to do that?
Yeah, I guess it's true. It's sort of how much you care about the health of the scene itself. And I'm not saying that top players are all bad people because they're not reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, do you want me to coach you?" I'm not saying that's something that should automatically be happening just because I'm saying it. But at the same time, I'm not sure if there is any of that happening or if it's our job to reach out to them. But I still think some communication should happen so that something is started.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the other issue, and I've gotten coaching from, some high-level players before, that I've actually paid for. But, I mean, the other issue is there's none of them like really have any sort of systems themselves for coaching or mentoring. So it's like they're making it up too. So there's also, that as well. So for them to even take on that task, they'd have to make up a whole new system of coaching them. So there's a lot of things that kind of need to be built in order for this. And I don't want to phrase it like top players don't care because they're not coaching. I don't think that's a requirement for top players to have to coach teams, though I do think it would be a very good thing to help other people. It's just you kind of would need, I don't know if it's like someone to just sort of like vet them, or you do want to, like, if you're going to put your time and effort into coaching a team, you don't want to like break up in 3 months, or them not being able to show up, or them not putting in the effort. You'd almost want to see them to be able to get results, or at least show some level of dedication before they did that.
Right.
And I guess there is a kind of another level of responsibility on the players themselves to kind of find the opportunities that, uh, to find that coaching and reach out to people. I mean, if you really need a mentor, think that's really going to, boost you to the next level. At the end of the day, systems or not, or whether top players should be reaching out to you, you gotta kind of make that happen yourself, first and foremost.
Right. And I think maybe those players reaching out to the more top players could show how much we do want to improve, because there are definitely a lot of driven people in this community. That's one thing I will compliment about us is I know a lot of people are very passionate about the game and they really do want to get better. It's just they don't have that sense of direction like I was saying before. And I think maybe showing more of that drive to improve to higher level players will maybe spark their interest and maybe want to make them help us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, let's see. What was there another issue that you wanted to bring up as far as progress in the community? We've got the map list. We have I guess sort of internship or even top players reaching out to lower level players. I actually thought it was. Oh, I did want to mention that. I guess recently in the +2 draft cup, they did have +1 players playing with +2 players, which I thought was kind of cool. So that's another like a way for them to kind of mingle with each other.
Oh, I didn't know that happened actually. That's cool.
Yeah. Sendo was hosting it the other day. Yeah. Just to mention, just to comment on the comments below, it's not a lot for coaching. It was only like $20 for an hour, which I think is reasonable actually for coaching, but it is still nice to have some people coach you. So what was the next issue that you wanted to bring up as far as the progress for the community?
I think another thing I was talking about this website before, but Sendu.inc, I think it's one of the best resources in the community, and Sendo is the hero we need but don't deserve. And it's honestly has so much more potential, and I think there are a lot of people using it, but it was something that I wanted to point out in case people don't know about it. There's just so much info on there that you don't realize until you actually go on there. Like, whenever I need a build nowadays, my first thing I do is I go on Sendu.inc and I look at all the builds that players have. So I guess that kind of is a way that we can get information from top level players is when I go on there and I say L3 builds, the first thing I see is first sees L3 build, or I'll see other top players L3 builds and whether or not they got tied 500 with it to see if it's actually credible. And I think Twitter is a great way for players to communicate, but at the same time, the way that Sunday.inc has everything laid out, there's just so much potential for us to use it. And I think one of the other ways that we can use it is, I know somebody was talking about on the tweet about how it's hard to find players to make a team with. There's a free agent service on there where you put all your info in and you find other people to make a team with, almost like a dating app. And I think more people should be aware of the fact that it's there for them if they need it.
Yeah, I just saw Resendo retweet not only, I guess, one of the teams using that app formed, and they're playing in Div 1 Ludi this season.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is awesome to see that as far as what Sendo.inc is doing is incredible. I was actually doing a review on it not that long ago, and it was just like for us, like even coming in competitive, we didn't have a resource like this. It's just so much different information that's available on that site it's incredible, and even the links themselves, they got links to all sorts of different resources that have tons of information. I think that's required reading for any player trying to get in competitive.
Right. I think I agree. It's definitely one of the best resources in the community.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I mean, on the topic of Sendo.inc, I was actually talking. I get it was pretty incredible as far as that +2 draft cup. I'm not sure what lean Nintendo is doing on the background, but they managed to get every single piece of info from the games as far as like what main abilities, what sub abilities, KAs, inked turf, how long the match lasted. All that was automatically updated to that web page like minutes after the tournament was done. It was
Wow.
actually pretty
I
incredible. I think he said he was going to try and implement it in Ludi in some way. Probably not in the full season, but that was actually kind of incredible to see that level of data becoming available almost immediately after a
wow.
tournament.
I actually didn't know that was happening myself. I didn't see that on there. It just shows you how much is on that website.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you go to, I think it's Draft Cup, you can see it. I don't know if he just started implementing it or not, but it's pretty incredible, especially like if it could be turned in a way to use kind of a turn to like track actually like people's stats like in a league format if you're able to do that and see over the course of time whether you've improved or uh, sort of gone downhill in some ways. The only I guess the
Mm,
only issue with analytics for like a game that's only 3 years old is we're not 100% uh, that what analytics are worthwhile because I mean as far as even a KAs you'll say like yeah KAs don't mean anything it's about this or that so
right.
it's hard to see like what would even be useful as far as information for uh, players.
Yeah, and I think having that resource out there in the first place speaks to maybe the top players actually do want to be able to help us out. Like I was saying before, I'm not sure if it's our problem or their problem, but I think um, Nintendo and Lean working on something like that, it really does show how much they do want to help out the community, and I think that's great. And that's why I wanted to point out the resource so that more people know about it. But at the same time, I think the data that they have, I think it's time we start to think about ways we can use that because it's great that we're getting all this information, but how do we turn that into um, ways to improve, or how do we figure out what's important in the data? I think that's the next step up to
Mm-hmm.
helping everyone improve and get better.
Yeah, we have to like that's I guess another thing we have to kind of build from the ground up is what data is worth looking at and which isn't. So as far as the next topic, was there anything else that you thought we had coaching or kind of mentoring players? We have the set map lists. We also have Sendo.inc. I actually think another thing I want to mention. I don't know if there's any way to get the Japanese players to use the site. Whether a Japanese version could be made for
Yeah,
those players. That's I guess the only thing is like I look at the top 500. I'm browsing top 500, looking at builds, and like almost the entire like first 3 pages of top 500 is just Japanese players. I would love to be
yeah,
able to kind of like see what are they building, and what are their builds.
yeah. It's true because, like we were saying before, they are clearly at a higher level of play than us. So it would be nice to see what they're doing differently.
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually possible or like that gap can be bridged, but it would be pretty awesome. All right, so what do you think the next topic is as far as the next thing we need to do to improve the scene or progress the scene?
I think an important thing to bring up is the discussion of Ludi and Ludi divs because it's one of the most controversial topics
Oh, I wanted to
that I
talk
see
about you.
around on Twitter.
I definitely wanted to talk
Yeah,
about that anyway, so that's fantastic. You're bringing it up. So go right into it.
cool. Okay, so from being on the Ludi seating council myself, uh, for season 9 and this upcoming season X, I helped out. Um, I think a lot of people they say that Ludi divs are inaccurate. They mean nothing. And while I agree that over time leads age and over time people change a lot and they get better, or maybe they're washed and they get a little bit worse. But at the same time, I don't want to discredit the work that the seating council puts into um, gauging a team's skill level because they really do everything that they can, because when you sign up for Ludi, you put in your results, you put in all your players, and both of those things are weighed heavily to see where div you should be put in. And I'm not saying it's necessarily the best system, because I know there are a lot of complaints and there are a lot of things that people disagree with. Um, there are actually a couple final things that I didn't necessarily agree with as well, but it was the majority opinion, so
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened. And at the same time, though, I think it's important to keep having those discussions, because I saw Kmart tweeted this the other day. He said that rankings are always going to be different because opinions are subjective, and we're never all going to have the same opinions. So I think maybe we should be taking that discussion of what makes a team good and turning it into maybe that system of improving and getting better. Maybe we can start figuring out ways to measure what makes a team good besides their results, and maybe looking at um, certain stats that they have during matches to figure out what makes them a good team. Because we're never going to get anywhere if we keep basing teams off of they beat this team, they beat that team. It's not necessarily a bad way of gauging their skill, but there should be a more systematic way. I think in general, moving more towards a systematic way of measuring everything is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the real issue, I guess, is I think that's always been has been the kind of how much data can you actually present. I guess it's one of the reasons why they always had those seeding tournaments as well, to where if a team
Mm-hmm.
just formed like Low Ludi's happy, and hey, let me get three guys and let's do it, and then if you're not 100% sure, who this person is, or he doesn't have a lot of previous results, like how do we know just how good they're going to be? It can be a really difficult thing to do.
Right, and that came in especially with seeding the lower div teams. There were so many teams that didn't put anything on their results, and some of them didn't even play seeding ladder. So it's like I had to put them in Div 8, and I felt bad. It's
Yeah.
just I don't know what to base your skill level off of. So um, I think speed ladder is another great thing to talk about as well. I think having the resource for matchups happening, I think it's an amazing thing, and I think there should be more tracking of matchups happening more often, because it is an important way to measure skill. I know I was saying just before that statistics matter as well, but it's important to keep track of how teams are beating each other, or what teams are beating each other, because that keeps the discussion going.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely, like, especially when like you have a team that has good results, or has a punch of results, and being able to see how a team with not as many results goes up against them, or how they do against them, could definitely help give you a better idea of just how they stack up to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, speed ladder. Some people have complained that I think towards the top there might be some issues as far as people avoiding certain teams trying to avoid other teams in the queues. But I think it's actually a really great system for people towards the end, or that aren't super high level teams, because I mean, one, it's very easy format, and two, if even if you like, especially when like Ludi seeding is involved, I mean, even if you get like top 32, that can still be a win for you, because that could mean you might be getting into a higher div for your team.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Uh, Now, as far as like Ludi seeding, I did want to go back to that. I mean, for me, the divs, I know it's kind of used as right now, like here's how good you are, like is what div you're in. But I mean, to me, it's I guess one of the goals of Ludi was just to really give players a sort of pool, or of I guess another, or I guess a group of other teams that they could actually go up against, that they're not going to get like completely blown out, or they got a chance to beat. So like apparently, like if you're in a div, like if you get put in like Div 3, I mean, chances are there's a chance that you could win Div 3. It's not like the best top of the Div 3 is just so far beyond you that you're gonna have to train for like a year to actually be able to take them down.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess to the point I'm making, it's almost kind of become rather than, hey, this is my opportunity to really like improve over the season. I've got this group that's going to provide me with an adequate challenge. It's kind of become like sort of the to many players, unfortunately, like this is how good I am right now, rather than this is what other people think of me is what my div is.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because a lot of people say that Moody divs aren't a great way of measuring skill, and I think maybe it's because we turned Moody divs into a way of measuring skill. Because I'm sure the original intention of Moody staff when they first made it was, we can't just have everyone playing against each other. We have to have some way of making these matches fair. So they probably just started throwing more closer teams into the same divisions. And I'm sure it wasn't their intention for every single person in the community to start basing their skill off of a div, but it's just sort of what happened. And I think you're completely right that it should be seen as an opportunity to improve and get better, and you shouldn't be focusing so much on what you got placed in the first place because it's more about having those closer matchups for you to work with because um, this is something I also wanted to talk about later, but it's important to play against teams that are closer in your skill level because that's the best way to improve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's always kind of been the argument that some of the players have been making. Excuse me. I'm just trying to mute those alerts, but I can't figure out how to do that. Oh well, but the point is like there's always been that argument like I gotta find higher level teams. I gotta find higher level teams, and then there's always been like the counter argument like you're not going to learn that much from getting blown out. I guess for some people like maybe that does really get them fired up. Just realizing just what a mountain they still need to climb
Right.
in order to get there. But I've always felt if they're just gonna put you back in your spawn and then pound on you for like half a minute and beat you, you're not gonna learn that much from that. Especially
Yeah,
like
it's
over
true.
like a 9, if especially it's like a best of 5. It's like I know at least in my Swiss experience, fighting some of the first 2 matches where you're just getting wrecked. It's not that bad, but it kind of it is humbling, I guess, in a way that can help you uh, grow, but it's not that great of a learning experience.
Right. It's true. And I think Ludi is a great way of getting away from that um, sort of thing happening in a tournament, and it gives you that chance to um, see where your skills really shine because it gives you those matchups where people are close to you in skill, so you can see what you're best at or what role you should be playing. And I think maybe we should start seeing Ludi more as that time to practice and get ready for the bigger major tournaments because um, I guess I'm not sure if Ludi would be considered a major tournament, but it's
Mm.
definitely a great resource for getting better because you're playing against teams that are so close to you in skill level. And as you play against those teams at your skill level, you'll start to see the mistakes that they're making and the mistakes that you're making. And as you start to pick away at those by lessening your mistakes and exploiting theirs, you'll start to get better.
Yeah, and I do also think like the fact that you're playing the same team multiple times does help you kind of gauge, if you're improving or not. Like if you can go up
Mm,
against them, and even like even if you need to adjust, your strategies, it gives you an opportunity to do that. You can come back, if I don't know what the I'm gonna play too much Ludi. I don't know how often you replay the same opponent. I think it's whatever like 4 or 5 weeks.
yeah, so I'm pretty sure the way it works is you get a group of 5 other teams, and you play those 5 teams in a separate week each. And I guess there's a chance that you'll see them again in the playoffs. I
Mm-hmm.
forget exactly how playoffs are seeded afterward, but it's 2 teams from each group that move on in each div. Um, but I think that we can start utilizing the Scrim group chats that they have in the server because they have it set up so that divs X to 2 have scrims, divs 3 to 5 have scrims, and then Div 6 to 8 have their own scrim group chats. So teams can use those to play against each other again and again. And Gloomy can be used so you can get those scrim partners to keep playing against so that you get better with them.
Yeah. And that, I guess Marcel also brought up a good point, is that Ludi is a great way to kind of network with other teams. You get to see, all right, who else is in Div X or Div 1, 2. All right, these are teams that I can kind of reach out to and say, hey, I'm Div 2. Like, even if they're Div 3 or Div 1, one above you or even one below you, you can reach out to them and say, like, hey, you want to practice, or, we're available. Would you like to, practice with us? And you can at least kind of see, like, all right, these might be people that I can actually get a match from that's going to be around my level.
Right. And I think that's a great point you bring up. Going back to communicating with people above your level, a lot of times people say, well, if you want to play in those higher level scrims, why don't you just try and reach out to them? Because it's not like +2 players only play with +2 players all the time. It's not like I can reach out to someone who's in +2 and be like, hey, would you mind doing a pickup with me? I want to get some practice with some higher level players. And every once in a while, I do get someone on like a +2 level who actually offers to me, like, hey, do you want to play with me in this tournament, in a pickup or whatever? So I think trying to reach out to those players to try and play with them, like, I guess the message is don't be scared to see how you do against them or playing with them in a pickup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's always like one of the fears, and that's, I kind of go back to like people using their divs as like they're measuring a skill. A lot of times they're afraid they're going to be judged for, if they reach out to like a div higher than them, they're going to say no, and then that means like they're not worth their time or anything. I mean, they could be busy, they could be not. I guess the worst they could say is no. You just can't be afraid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I know pretty much every high level player that I've asked for help they don't always say yes, but they've at least, none of them been rude to me and said like, no, I don't have time for you, garbage, or anything like that. They've always been nothing but, polite. So we kind of cover Ludi. What's the next topic you want to move on to as far as how we can progress?
I think going off of Ludi and what we were saying about teams being close in skill level, I think it's important to think about how we can start practicing against teams of our skill level to get better. And it's something that I started thinking about because Champ brought it up in a video that he put out as a message to mid-level players who want to get better. And what he said was, it's important to have scrim partners because, like I was saying before, these are actually his words. As you fight each other again and again, you're going to start finding their mistakes and you're going to start exploiting them. And they're going to start finding your mistakes and they're going to start exploiting them. So you'll start visually seeing over and over again the mistakes that you're making, and you're just going to keep pushing each other to the limit, and it'll just naturally help you improve. And I think one of the better ways to help find those mistakes is playing in longer scrims, because I'm not sure exactly how long everyone plays in scrims a day, but I feel like the average team gets on for maybe an hour, hour and a half, under 2 hours, and I don't know if they actually get anything out of playing for that time. It might be better to start thinking about longer, more intense scrims, but the problem is we don't always play against teams of our skill levels, so those scrims are either a complete destruction or super easy for you, so you don't really stay in those scrims. So if we start playing in scrims that are closer to our skill level for a longer period of time, I feel like maybe we need to start to improve faster.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, as far as finding players at the same skill level, I know you probably have a lot more experience being a team captain. How are you going about that to try and find? Obviously sometimes it can be hard to find a full team that's ready, that's around your skill level. What do you do as far as that goes?
So usually if I were to find a scrim, this kind of goes back to having those connections and talking
Mm-hmm.
with higher level players. My first server that I go to is a server called Spring Group that has a bunch of players around, uh, I'd say the Div 1 to 2 skill level, quote unquote. And usually the teams there are right around my skill level. So, um, even if they aren't, it's still, like you were saying before, it's not exactly the best feeling or best thing to get beaten down by another team. But um, I guess sometimes that does happen too. So it's hard to find those people that are close in your skill level. But I think it's important to start setting up those systems um, of people that you have to play against over and over again. And people should start focusing on consistently playing the same team because I'm sure there's got to be at least one team out there that has the same schedule as yours and the same skill level as yours. There's got to be.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. I guess one of the things is always the sort of fragmentation of a bunch of different Discord servers, a bunch of different sites. Well, I guess not necessarily sites as much as like social media / Discord seems to be the
Right.
main way people connect, and sometimes it can be hard to work out when you have like I don't know how many scrim servers there are, but I imagine it could be in double digits as far as different places.
Right.
And that can always be an issue. The other thing is like sometimes I just don't understand why people can't show up on time. Or I guess this is kind of like because it's a younger community, but like if you want to work on those connections, like why can it be so hard for people to actually be prompt to these scrims?
Yeah, people should want to commit. You're right.
But I mean I guess that's more of an aside then. But I guess if you want to improve, but you can't make sure that you're actually and make those connections, make sure you're actually making good connections.
Right.
All right. So, what was the next topic you wanted to go into as far as practice, or making improving the scene?
Um, Something that I wanted to go back to for a second in terms of Ludi. This is something I almost forgot. I saw Marcel say in the chat about not every team playing in Ludi. So I think maybe just as a quick thing, as a reminder, maybe your div in Ludi isn't exactly the best way to measure your skill level because it's not like every team plays. If we had every team play in Ludi, then everybody would drop a div easily because there's just this. I guess there's the same skill levels across the board for every div. Like there would still be. It's not like we're missing level of play. It's just that that level of play doesn't have as many players as it should, especially in the top divs. I feel like there should be more teams setting up like the top level teams. And I get that they don't necessarily like the system maybe or what their
Mm-hmm.
problem is with Ludi, but um that's why it's not really the best measure of your skill because I'm currently in Div 1 with the team that I'm playing with, but at the same time I don't think I'm right below the top level of play. I still think I have a
Yeah,
ways to go.
yeah. I think even between like +2 and +1, there's quite a large skill gap. I mean, if you were to take the averages of both, I mean, though even Sendo himself said like the top of +2 may actually be better than the bottom of +1. It can be very hard to say, where those skills are. And I mean, I can't blame some of the top teams for not wanting to do it. It's a big commitment, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even in the teams that sign up themselves, I don't know what the attrition rate is, but you definitely have teams, drop out over the course of the weeks. So, and not to mention schedule for anyone that has to do that scheduling to set up those matches. I feel for them because that can be a very difficult. I mean, just getting your own team to decide on a time is hard enough, and then
Right.
trying to work in the other team, it can be rough.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't understand why people. I guess I kind of understand why people are so obsessed, with the skill, what showing what skill they are accurately. But I've almost feel that it's almost just better to focus on getting better than you are right now, rather than worrying about what kind of other people see you as. I guess only the people are sometimes worried about. I guess what opportunities being a higher level skill could be. Like if I just get Div 1 or Div X, all of a sudden it's like doors are magically opening in front of me, and then people are just
Right.
messaging me constantly like, "Hey, join our scrim, bro. +1. Let me vouch for you." But
Yeah, it's definitely not true. Talking from experience, like I guess there has been opportunities for me as I get better, but it doesn't come from being in a higher Ludi div. It comes from uh winning those matchups in tournaments or getting close to winning matchups in tournaments that allow players to recognize, hey, maybe this person has some potential here.
have you actually felt that like reaching out to different players, making those connections that you mentioned earlier has actually made it easier for you to be reached out to, for other opportunities?
Um, I would say so. I feel like there are some. How do I word this? It seems like once you get into one of those servers or you make one connection, the more starts to come more easily. And I think one of those connections, like I was talking about before, is Burn Group. It was, I'll never forget, I actually asked with one of my friends, Scrub, at a land if I could join. And once I got the invite, there were just a bunch of players that I felt were above my skill level there. And I was like, oh, wow, this is a great opportunity. But at the same time, the reason I asked and I was allowed in is because um, I forget which one it was, but whatever land it was, I feel like I proved myself a little bit more. I showed I had potential to get better. So I think if teams start focusing more on their own improvement and showing that they have that potential to be better, then connections will start coming to them and people will start recognizing them because it's not going to come from, like you said, getting that higher div in Ludi. It's not like people are just automatically going to start talking to you.
Yeah, I guess that is kind of the biggest challenge is taking that kind of initiative. It can be sometimes pretty difficult. And I guess it's also kind of relates back to the sort of path, like what is the path for us? And I mean, it's easy to like, all right, I do good in Ludi, I move up the divs to X, X plus, and then I'm a Splatoon pro. But it's really not that easy. And then like, what is that path? How do I progress? And
Right.
keep seeing myself getting better and better. What's the next step I take? And that can be very hard sometimes. And I guess that is
Mm-hmm.
kind of one of the major themes of this kind of conversation is where's the path to where is the kind of the established path to get better.
Right. It's all about establishing that system, like we were talking about before.
Mm-hmm. Right on. So what was there some other topics that you wanted to cover as far as the progression?
I think going hand in hand with what we were saying about showing potential in matchups, I think this is a smaller thing, but it's still important in my opinion. I think in tournaments we should start allowing teams to report the scores of a match because whenever you report what happened in the match, you always just say this team won 2-0 or this team
Mm-hmm.
won in a complete shutout. And when everybody sees that, they're like, oh, they beat them pretty easily. But it may not be that way in the actual match. You don't know
Yeah.
how long those matches were or how many points one team got. So I think what we should start doing is we should start implementing a way for teams to report how many points they scored in each match. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be great because then we can start recognizing the potential in teams because who knows, maybe there are teams out there who are getting 2-0'd who are still losing by a point or two. And there are people who say that on Twitter like, oh, these matches were super close. We were right there with them. But there are people who don't see that because they only look at the brackets in the end. They don't see people on Twitter saying how close they were because they don't look at those people's tweets or stuff.
No, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of like 3-0s that were like decided by just one play going the right way for the other team, and it becomes like that. And I mean it. I don't know. I think most things have some sort of like screenshot option. I just don't know if it's kind of. I guess it's kind of hard to do with the kind of going through the switch and then the computer. Is it now how easy it is to do that? I know Lean, like I mentioned before, seems to have some sort of way to scalp data from the switch, but how easy will that be to implement? In a large scale tournaments.
Right. I think it wouldn't be the easiest thing to find a call it, a systematic way to automatically report it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would be a good thing for TOs to maybe make a chat in the Discord server, like alongside your match score, put in the points that you got for this match,
Yeah.
so that they can somehow put it onto the tournament website. I don't know what tournament websites are able to do that or have pages for that,
Mm.
but I think there's got to be some way that we can start doing that so we can start seeing that.
Yeah. And then it's also like who's going to keep track of it, and like what kind of system are we going to put in place to make sure this data is all collected in one spot or one database so it could be referenced. I know there's been some attempts, like I think the World League was trying to do similar things, with their series. Unfortunately, that didn't seem to work out too well. But
Right.
hopefully, there's been some attempts, so hopefully we'll eventually gonna get something rolling here. Because you're definitely right in terms of measuring skill. It can be very hard to see, like if you're just basing it off brackets and emplacements, because you don't know. And then of course, once you factor in matchups, there can be a lot of ways that the bracket definitely messes you up, where you're going up against the best team. Like if you're end up eighth seed and you're going against one in the top eight, and you still do well against them, even if it's 3-0, but you hold your ground, that's still a pretty big accomplishment.
Right, and it's important to see that.
Yeah. It's definitely, and of course, Nintendo, not to bash on Nintendo, but they're not making it easy for us in a lot of
No,
ways.
definitely not.
I mean, the fact that like we're doing like backdoor stuff to actually do stuff that Nintendo could just give us straight up is a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. Let's move on. What was the next thing you wanted to focus on?
Um, I guess I don't have anything specific to talk about anymore, but I think just as something to keep in mind in general with all the things I've been saying, I think it's important that we start treating Splatoon more like an esport in general if we do want it to become an esport one day, because just with a bunch of the things that we've been talking about, I think it comes from a bit of laziness and a bit of just wanting to play a video game. And
Mm.
I think if we started taking the initiative to start doing more things, like implementing a system to see how you improve, or getting more scrim partners to play them for longer periods of time to see what your mistakes are, or doing more VOD reviews. That's another thing I wanted to mention. I think VOD reviews are really important so you can point out your mistakes, or using Sendu.inc to see what the top players are using so you can try and copy their builds and try it out for yourself. I think it's important that we as a community start taking the initiative to do more things like that and create more systems for improvement so that we actually can do it, because I feel like we're lacking that system for improvement.
Mm-hmm. And as far as like, what could like your average competitive player do to really, I guess, move that forward? So you're basically saying is it's really on all of us to start stepping up our game as far as how we're attacking and how we're improving. Uh, each day, each scrim, each tournament.
Exactly. It's all about, like I was saying, it's like we want Splatoon to be an esport, but we're treating it like this casual video game that we're just getting on to play every day in scrims.
Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about esport, are we really talking about as far as the popularity of it, or is it really just when you're saying esport, just the level of competition just isn't up to par at the moment, or isn't getting to the where it needs to be at the moment?
Um, I guess it's a little bit of both. I think maybe the popularity could improve from a closer level of competition. Like, say people were to start getting closer in competition, maybe that would draw more attention to the scene and get more people to try the game. I think it might also come from Splatoon 2 being a bit of an older game. I know some people are starting to leave the scene as time goes on,
Mm.
and maybe Splatoon 3 could be an opportunity for us to really start um, getting things together for it to be a bigger esport. Maybe not as big as the biggest ones, but I think it's a little bit of both. I think right now, though, what we can do, since we don't have Splatoon 3 in our hands, is we can start making the competition closer.
Yeah, I think this is. I think that's a great point, and something I've always kind of thought is like we're almost in a lull between the sort of next version to really bring in new blood, but it is a really great opportunity, like you said, to kind of improve the infrastructure of the community to help kind of streamline these teams and get them better faster. Rather like
Mm-hmm.
you have right now the sort of first wave's almost kind of gone through of Splatoon, kind of trailblazing. But are we really making putting down the paths that they've left, refining that and making it easier for other players to follow?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's definitely a lot to think about, and I think the biggest challenge is always going to be like who's going to do it, who's on it, and I guess the other issue is like what could an individual person do. It's like a lot of times like we hope people can do it, and I mean maybe it's got to be people like Sendu and Lean. It's through maybe technology part of it, but is it TOs working out these lists when what even on top of that, like what does your average player do that's just a viewer or a fan or someone that's aiming for the top, what actions can they perform to actually make that happen?
Right.
There's definitely a lot of unanswered questions, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think just having the discussion in the first place is taking that first step. I feel like I was saying a couple months ago, we had the discussion of a universal map list, or we've had these types of discussions of things we were talking about before,
Hmm.
but the community never commits to it fully. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
time that we start taking that discussion and start taking action.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully as we work it out, it becomes more and more something that gets more and more concrete as time goes on.
Mm.
Definitely. I know. Is SAC actually kind of decided on a set map list?
We do have a set map list for the first Swiss part of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we had the counter picks map pool for the set play of the Swiss spawning grounds the other day. But we actually don't have a universal one for all of our tournaments yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that we're going to be implementing in the future because um, we kind of just started to get everything back together as Nathan left his position. So
Yeah.
putting together our first tournament, we wanted to focus more on making sure everything ran smoothly and that we had that map list in the first place. But I definitely think something we'll look into in the future is having that universal map list.
Yeah. Fantastic. Uh, that is a big thing. There is like kind of like off the topic, but I mean, I guess it probably is. I did want to talk to you about SAC and how that's been going. I know I got to, like I mentioned before, I got to watch Squid Spawning Grounds, and it was quite enjoyable. The matches I did see towards the end, I thought Narwhal, I think it's Narwhal Gaming versus Illmatic was
Yeah,
was actually really fun to watch. Unfortunately, I think Vogue turned out to be a sweep for Narwhal Gaming, but I can't really blame them paying it like 6 a.m. with an emergency
yeah,
sub. Unfortunately, it's not the best conditions, but those two teams seemed like they were really closely matched.
yeah. I agree. They're definitely some of the most fun team to watch, and that's why I think publicizing the SAC is important, and that's why I wanted to get involved in the first place. Is we have these teams that have so much potential, and they need to be recognized. And I think teams, especially like Narwhal and Nomadic, they're getting so much better. And in my opinion, they're basically at the same level of play as the top teams from last season were already. And it's not even the end of the season for them. So I think we should be recognizing that talent that they have and start finding ways to work on it with them so that they can get into that higher level of play.
Absolutely. And is this their first time for them teams in SAC, or they kind of like came in from the other seasons? They've just been working their way up.
I didn't see these teams until this season. Maybe it's just because they placed that low in the bracket in the previous seasons, and now they've gotten better. They've been placing better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely across the season they've been playing a lot more. It's not like this was their first tournament, though.
I see. So they're like really starting to kick it into high gear, and
yeah, definitely,
really grinding it out. That's pretty awesome. And it's also, I really like in the kind of like amateur bracket. I mean, it's definitely different a little bit than top level play, but you have certain players that just seem to kind of like really be a step above the rest, even on their teams. Like you have like some slayers like Omen that seem to like really like break out and sometimes even take command of a game, and it's really cool to see. And of course, I guess Bagel came from the SAC. Is probably, I don't know if what do you say, he's the most recognized, kind of like started in the SAC player that's now on a top level team.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. He's one of the biggest breakouts. I'd say he is arguably the biggest breakout player. I don't know what he did. Like he's gone to land, so he's not an alt. But it's just crazy to see. He went straight from SAC to that top level of play. Like Sayonara wasn't a top team at the moment that he joined them, but I was like, wow, the fact that he joined that higher level team is incredible. Now that they're already at the top with him, it's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like he just showed up out of nowhere. I guess that's kind of the opportunity that SIC gives you. I don't know if they recruited him. Was he on Sayonara before, or did they recruit him out of like an SAC team?
I'm pretty sure they recruited him out of an SAC team. I'm not sure what prompted him to leave 4D at the time because that was his SAC team, Fourth Dimension, and I'm pretty sure he left them in the middle of the season actually, and I think it was because he started to realize I have a little more skill than the rest of the players on my team, so let me see where I can take that, and that's when he started to get tryouts from higher level teams.
I mean, that is still pretty cool. I mean, certain people, I guess, they just grow at a different level than other people, and I think Guess Bagel is definitely one of them, just on how well he's been doing, even on a top level team like that. And I guess this just gives you the opportunity for them to show off and see, just how well they can do in this format, and that I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's, I guess that's really, the goal of the SAC. One thing I'm kind of worried about is, like, after they win SAC, or these teams that do well on SAC, what happens to them after that? Because it almost seems like you have this kind of disconnect. I mean, you're not going to be winning a major right out of SAC, so, like, what do you do in that meantime to kind of improve from there?
Right. I think that is an important thing to bring up. I won't say exactly the way that we plan on having that happen, but there has been internal discussion on ways that we can help these players go from the SAC level to the next the next skill level. Because personally, playing in season 0, when I finished the season, it was just sort of like, okay, what now? Like, we were still at that SAC top level of play, and it's not that it doesn't translate to being better than the rest of the SAC. It's just it doesn't translate to being able to compete with top level teams. So we would still play in those same tournaments that the top level players would play in, that we would play during the SAC season, and we would still get beat up by them pretty good. So it's definitely something that we're working on to create a system where players can go straight from the SAC to a higher level of play, and we want to help them become more comfortable in doing that. That's something we're working on for the next season.
Cool. What do you think about? I don't know if you've heard some arguments. Do you think that there's too much of a gap right now between the highest level of SAC and kind of like the lower level of SAC?
Um, I guess I want to say there's a huge gap. Um, I think the thing to realize is there are teams who are progressing so fast, like Novel and Nomadic, that are just so far ahead of these newer teams, and that sort of goes along with having the different seasons of SAC. It gives everyone their time to shine. So,
Mm-hmm.
like if any of the teams from the season zero top eight were to come back in, they would have a feast. Like they, it would be a little bit too
Yeah.
easy for them. So, there is a pretty big gap between the highest level of SAC and the lowest level of SAC. That's because some of those teams on the lowest level, they're playing their first tournaments, so of course they're not going to be that good. The
Mm-hmm.
players at the top level of SAC, they've been playing this game and practicing together in comp for a really long time ago, a really long time now. So of course they're going to be better.
Yeah. I guess it's wondering just like how do we define an amateur team versus like it's never like you could have like some at the bottom that are just like complete awful like rank B. I mean I don't want to say them awful, but you know they're rank B, they're new, and then towards the top I mean like I think all those people are X rank players and probably like getting up to like 2400, 2500 level players. So I mean
Mm-hmm. There are definitely people at the lower level of SEC who aren't exactly like X level yet, and then there are players at the top who are there. You're right.
yeah, they could even be top 500, maybe, maybe not. Actually, probably
Yeah.
yes.
Maybe every once in a while there's some of them like Bagel who have the potential to be there, but
Yeah.
they're getting to that level. They're starting to get there.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That is kind of like, and what do you see? I mean, you already kind of mentioned what going forward, but as what do you see SAC doing as it's going forward?
Um, I think it's going to be one of those things that we'll work on together internally, but we don't want to reveal all our plans yet
I see. So
for what we're going to do to get things together like that.
so SAC is not going anywhere. It's just getting bigger. I guess it would be safe to
Yeah,
say.
definitely.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And I did want to mention, like, how has the sort of sponsorship helped you? Because this is actually kind of, I seem almost unique in any tournament, like, period, is an actual sponsor.
I think it's just more about the popularity, like you were talking about before.
So basically, the popularity is just the fact that you guys are out there, you're doing it, and that's all helping you get opportunities to get these sponsors and people helping out.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the sponsors have helped us in a way that it draws more people to play in the SAC because um seeing that we have those people sponsoring us, um even me personally, when we first got the sponsorship and Nathan had things set up, I was like, oh wow, that's cool that we have these things that I've actually used in the past or seen are sponsoring us, and it encouraged me to want to work with SAC more because it's cool to see the Splatoon scene growing bigger and more popular. So I think it helps get more people playing in our tournaments.
Oh, right on, right on. I actually was, and I don't. Are they still doing that stuff with Matcherino? As far as
Um, yeah, we still are. We still have that donation system in place.
no, that's I thought that was actually a cool way to like actually let people let young kids that maybe not have a lot of money to donate to actually kind of do just some small things that actually help raise the prize pool. I thought it was
Yeah, and if we took the initiative as a community together to all do it, then the prize pool would be huge.
that is I guess another like way like a small call to action that everyone can do that would help improve.
Mm.
All right, the I guess one of the other things I want to get to kind of back to Ludi, but I know you're on the seating council, and you've talked about that a little bit. Has there been a lot of fallout over a season? I know there's drama, but has it been particularly bad or worse or better than what it's been before?
Do you mean the skill level or just the overall
I mean,
status of Ludi?
I mean more like the players' reactions to it. I don't know if you've. I know you've had a thread where you were talking like, "Hey, if you got any questions about seating, come ask me, and I'll try to explain it." Has there been like any sort of angry or like hate thrown your way?
Definitely none thrown my way, I guess, in the general direction of Ludi. And that's understandable because, like I was saying before, opinions are always going to be different than each other's. But that's why the seating council is a thing, so it's not just staff um, trying to figure out what they should put all these players in. It's all about having more people from the community help out so that we do get more opinions and we get more ideas flowing so that we get the most accurate uh, assessment of this possible. So I wouldn't say there's any anger towards me directly, but I have seen some opinions that say, "Oh, these people don't deserve to be this div," or "These people do deserve to be this div." But at the same time, I think that's an important discussion to have, and I actually appreciate seeing that because um, it's important to have more discussion like that in general.
Right on. I don't think I really have anything else as far as I wanted to talk about. We covered Ludi. We covered the points that you wanted to make as far as, I guess, to summarize it. What as far as what we're going to do, it's I guess it comes down to structure. So you're saying like universal map list is going to be a big one,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I know. I guess there is there like some wiggle room you think in that as far as like if people want to do counter pick or set play.
Oh yeah, I think counterpicking is still an important thing to have. I think it's important to use that because it encourages a different style of strategy where you're not forced to play on the maps that the TiVos give you, and you can try and figure out what you can do to help win the match. It's a whole other level of strategy that teams should still be using. So I think counterpicking is still important to have. It's just important that we have that universal map list or map pool for that tournament or all the tournaments across the board as much as we can.
So like as like a first map or a Swiss section, whatever they want to do, there needs to be. And like what kind of size do you think that needs to be, or is that something that just needs to be nailed down?
Um, I guess if I had to put a rough number on it, maybe at the very most 50 map mode combos. As at the very, very most, like it should definitely be less. But I guess it would be a start. I guess maybe
Hmm.
at its peak, I'd say about 20 to 30 map mode combos to work on, since JP has all the zones maps in their map pools and they play all of them. So that's about 24. So I think
Hmm.
around there is good.
And then you just add on certain maps from other modes.
Yeah.
Right on, right on. And I guess the second one I believe you brought up was the what was it? That was the
Uh, Kind of forget myself. It
yeah,
was, I think it was talking more about connections between
yeah,
high level players and low level players.
the sort of mentoring programs or mentoring initiatives need to happen. I definitely
Hmm.
agree with that. I'm just wondering, like, is it going to need? Are we going to need like some older vets to actually come in and do that aren't playing, or is it going to have to be active players or teams that are doing that as well?
Right. Hmm.
And that's, I guess, something that maybe I guess is up to the top players to really push. I'm not sure if there's anything we can do as far as that to entice top players to do that as just just regular competitors or fans. But we'll see. I mean, hopefully solutions will come from that. That's
Hmm.
definitely because I definitely think that is important. Is having some players or some system that people can follow to kind of get better at the game. I mean, even
Yeah.
like oh we'll go with that later. But so the next was I guess Ludi, you're talking about the divs and why that's important, and I guess the personal connections that were needed.
Yeah, it's definitely like we were saying. It's not exactly the worst measure of skill, but it's not like it's make or break. And I think it's come from uh the fact that we've been playing Ludi for so long that it became the only measure of skill. So it's almost like we're letting a council always decide where we should be in the scene. And I think it's more important we move towards a statistical perspective of that and not always basing it off of what the council says.
Mm,
So it's still important to see because they're trying to do everything they can with the statistics that we have, like matchups, but you can also gauge it based off of other things.
yeah, more data. More data is needed.
Mm-hmm.
More data collection. That is a point as
Mm-hmm.
far as like the age of Ludi. That is one of the things that is kind of a little bit worrisome. Is it seems like less and less we're seeing the old. There's not a lot of old structures. I mean, losing Ink TV I think was pretty big, a big hit because things like BNS, things like FA Stravaganza, which I think was a good thing for new players
Oh yeah,
to do. Uh,
definitely.
Invitationals, we lost a lot of stuff, and then I don't know if EG seems like they're doing as much lately, that they're focusing on other stuff, but there is
Yeah,
definitely
I
a
agree with
lack.
that. They're doing a
There's
little bit less.
definitely a lack of majors. I mean, we had GSM do their thing. I mean, they can only do so much, at a time, but it does seem like there's not a lot of legacy like organizations or events that have been going on as long as Ludi. I mean, the fact there's a season 10 is actually pretty amazing. I don't know if you will have a season 10 of anything.
Yeah, it's true.
I guess the other thing was we mentioned divs, connections, a big thing. I guess Ludi helps implement that as far as players find a way to make connection with people, and that's actually something that I've really seen in. I know you're involved in some competitive sports outside of the community, bowling specifically.
Mm-hmm.
You're on like a league or a team.
I was on my school team, and we luckily finished our season before the whole coronavirus hit. And outside of
Mm-hmm.
that, I tried to do leagues. So, in the same way, it is a great resource because there are obviously people better than me in those leagues, and they'll try and offer some advice sometimes. So it's important that we start seeing that in Moody as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I also think it's also the community that keeps you kind of coming back. I've noticed that myself, getting involved in things like jujitsu, just going there, talking with people, having that, kind of interaction really helps keep you focused on doing it every single week or, every single
Uh,
month. And that's, I mean, you can see it with lands. Like after you get after a land, you're like super pumped. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of local scene for a lot of people, but it is a very huge boost to motivation to be able to go there and be around people that kind of share that same interest and passion.
for sure. I think the reason that I wanted to start having this discussion in the first place was after being at home for so long and playing more Splatoon, I realized how much time I invested into the game and the community. And I realized I don't really, I mean, I do try and do things to improve it, but I want to start looking for a more universal way to improve it so that we could all have a better time together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe that just comes down to having those structures and organizations. I think
Mm-hmm.
SAC's done a fantastic job. Uh, I mean, I think people are definitely been benefiting from that, and just that idea that started small and that just keep on growing and growing and growing. I guess what you're up to? What season for SAC? Season 3?
Yeah, technically the third season, but called season two since it started on season
Zero.
zero.
Zero. That's fine. That's fine. I don't mind. I started at season 0, but that's very cool, and you can only imagine like if it gets to a season 10, what it's going to look like. That's definitely exciting. There is like that's the thing. I guess there is positive things that have improved. Some of it is bad, like losing Ink TV, but seeing new organizations pop up and doing stuff that are trying to improve the scene is definitely cool.
Yeah, it definitely is really cool, and I think it's also cool to see those top level players coming out to play in those smaller organizations tournaments. Like when Jerry's Crown Cup first started up a while back, um, my former teammate Jerry, he started the tournament, and it was really cool to one day see Demise playing in one of the tournaments. I was like, oh wow. So um, I definitely do see the top players wanting to help improve the community as well, and I think it's important to recognize that.
For sure, yeah. It's cool to see, and even like Pay to Splat, I saw that's just started up. I think they had their first tournament. A lot of high level teams showed up to that tournament. I was
Oh
surprised.
yeah,
That was some really top talent right there, and I think anytime you can get those guys together and them playing, that's actually I'm really excited for Lucy Div or the X Plus. I mean, some of the teams in there just seem insane.
yeah, that's definitely a stack. That's going to be exciting to watch.
I mean, because usually, I guess one of the criticisms of Ludi is like there are a lot of teams, really high level teams, don't show up to it, and to actually look at X Plus and see, I mean T4, Mild Squid. I don't actually know who's on T4 because they're all Japanese, but I assume they're really good. I mean, I just look over and I see you Mild on Mild Squids, and I'm assuming that's going to be insane. And then of course you have Astral, Destiny Bond, looks crazy stacked with Bliss, Jared, Zero. I'm not too familiar with Domo, Juan, Wally, and Orion, but I assume they're pretty darn good.
Yeah, they're definitely really good players. I've seen them play myself. They're really good.
Yeah. Han Ron, Robin Friends. Seems like a really stacked EU team. There's just a lot of cool stuff to see. I hopefully we get someone will be able to stream their matches. That's the only, I guess, downside I've always, or like thing I didn't like about Ludi, is you don't always get to see the matches. I mean, it's great that it goes on, but I would love to see some of these DivX Plus matches showcased. Hopefully, Lean gets a chance to do that.
Yeah, me too. I hope they stream it.
Yeah, I definitely want to actually see. It's always fun when you get to see the Japanese teams play against Western teams,
Yeah.
or even I don't know if the two Japanese teams are in the same div and they're playing against each other. That would be cool to see too. Though I
Yeah,
assume,
you're right. I didn't think about that. That'd be cool.
though I assume they're probably going to play at some like godforsaken hour, like 4 a.m. in the morning for us, or something like that. Who knows when they'll schedule that? But that
hmm
will definitely be cool. I can't actually believe they're actually doing it too.
Yeah, I think it's cool that they actually came out to play it. I was really surprised when I saw them at first when I was seeing them, and I was like, well, they have to be at the top then.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I don't know who the names are, but I just already know they're gonna be. That they probably got to be good.
Yeah.
All right. I don't. I heard it was. Oh, Jerry. Yeah. Man. Yep. He's definitely here in the chat. That's awesome.
Yes, playing Jerry's Crown Cup this Wednesday,
Oh,
upcoming.
nice. Fantastic. It is very cool to see. I was just looking at the calendar, competitive calendar, and there's an event every single day for Splatoon. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities to get out there and play.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I don't think I have really anything else. I mean, we've been talking for about an hour and a half now, so it's awesome to kind of have that conversation with you. I think it's very
Yeah.
interesting to kind of see, like, to really just even sort of get it out there and kind of formulate thoughts as far as like what we can do and what we could do, get people talking about it. I've seen a lot of guys in the chat having their own conversations, which is, I think, awesome. Anytime you can get a bunch of people together and they start talking about the scene is fantastic. Oh, all right. Oh, we do have a question. I don't know if you want to answer it. It's up to you. From
Um.
Paladin Knight,
Uh.
Chris, what are your thoughts on how to get more viewers to pay attention to the scene of the game and to get an audience for it?
I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with making the scene more competitive in the first place, because
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of tournaments that we have where it is just top teams dominating and sweeping the lower level teams. So I think maybe by doing these things, implementing structures and helping everyone improve, we can have the competitive uh, feeling going around be a lot more intense and have teams be a lot closer to each other so that um, there's almost one similar level of play instead of there being so many low level players and high level players. So I'm hoping that maybe by uh, taking this action to get everybody to be closer in skill level, that there's more attention drawn to our scene. But at the same time, I get that that won't do everything because it's hard to find people who do want to invest their time in Splatoon because they don't see the reason in doing so with the scene lacking some popularity. So I think maybe giving them a reason or incentive to come and play, like more competitive scene, is an important thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, everyone kind of brings up like Melee has kind of been like the example that, but I mean, they've kind of developed that scene. Gosh, I don't know how old this game is. You played it. I started playing it in college, which kind of shows how old I am. So it's probably, let's see, what, almost getting close to 20 years old now. So, I mean, they've had a lot of time to grow it versus Splatoon, which is like in its third year, I believe.
Right.
So it's definitely hard to say. And oh, it's 18. Thank goodness it's not. It's
Wow.
it's not quite 20 yet. Yeah, and I think even to the point is it's also kind of hard to really like advertise it some of the times. I mean, I have to. It's like sometimes you'll see like even some of the tournaments that happened like yesterday or on Sunday, you won't really like hear about it beyond the tournament happening or the beyond the Twitch chat. There's not a lot of like social media advertising these players or their teams, and I think uh, orgs I think do a pretty good job some of the times, but I think that's definitely something that could definitely be improved as far as like advertising the game.
Yeah, I definitely think it is important, and like we said, it comes with the game being uh so old yet so new because Splatoon 2 has been around for a while, so more people are starting to see less reason to invest time into it. But at the same time, the competitive scene is still so new compared to games like Melee that we don't have um the same systems that they have in place.
Yeah, not to mention like the local scenes and all sorts of different organizations that've been around for a while. Yeah, that
Mhm.
infrastructure I think is definitely something that needs to develop more, and finding ways like how people can contribute and take part in that infrastructure is definitely a challenge going to be going forward.
Right, and hopefully that will draw more attention to the scene.
Yeah, for sure, definitely for sure. All right, uh, I really don't have anything else. I don't know if you do any other
Uh,
topics you want.
no, that's I think that's pretty much it for me too. That was pretty much all the thoughts I wanted to put out there. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here today. I wanted to put out a video putting out my thoughts, but I didn't really know where to start.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier sometimes actually doing it in like a conversation form rather than just like putting them out there into air. So I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing it with me, and then give me the opportunity to kind of bounce my own thoughts on out at you and see what you think. So thank you very much, Chris, for coming on. It's fantastic. I hope you guys in the chat enjoyed it. I know I certainly did. I will post this up later on to my YouTube. Of course, you can still look on Twitch and the videos. It's at Splat Chris. I don't know if you have any other social media you wanted to plug while you're on here.
I don't think I do. I guess if I wanted to put anything out there, if you had any more questions like Plot and I did, you can always DM me on Twitter, like David said, at Splat Chris. And I do have a Discord, but it's got a weird symbol on there, so it's kind of hard to type out and find me. So if you have any more questions, I'd say just DM me on Twitter.
Oh, fantastic. Right on. Thank you, Splat Chris, for joining us on my first interview of the Splat Report. Hopefully, definitely not my last. you have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.